Hey, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club. I'm continuing my build of the Rocketarium Gadfly. So, last time didn't go so well attaching these big long fins. I eventually got them on. It took a good amount of persuasion. And in looking at the fins after the fact, the underlying cause seemed to be that they weren't completely flush on the bottom, so they were a little bowed or something like that. So, in the intervening time, I broke out my ruler here, my straight edge, just to make sure that the other ones were pretty straight. They're not quite perfect, but they are certainly better. I did run them over some sandpaper to just make sure that things were straighter than the first two. So I'm going to do my best to attach these. I did seek out a little bit of advice, and while I am going to continue using this particular make of wood glue, I did pick up some other wood glue as well, same brand, same company anyway, but a thicker glue. So I'm going to try sticking with my regular wood glue first, but if this fin also seems to give me some difficulty, I'm going to switch over to the other stuff. So this particular formulation of wood glue, this company makes a variety, and this is the faster tack version. The other stuff that I have is even faster tacking, so if this proves to be problematic, then we'll give that a try. But I like this brand. I like it better than some other manufacturers, not to name names. But even among this particular brand, they do sell a variety of glues that have different set speeds, and this is the one that tacks fastest, which is generally what I think is most important in building these. It's certainly strong too, right? So that's not really at issue. It's not really the strength of the wood glue that I'm concerned about. It's all perfectly strong. It's a matter that it sets up faster that is more useful than anything else. This stuff is also less expensive than the other stuff that I picked up. So that would be another reason to stick with this option over the other. Probably help if this were open the whole way. There we go. Ooh, that was a lot more than I wanted. Remember, the amount of glue you're putting on here really isn't going to affect the strength once you get a certain amount on. But if you go heavy, you're definitely going to increase the amount of time that it takes for everything to set up nicely. So I'm going to try to brush this evenly. I'm probably going to end up taking a bit off because that was a bit of a heavy pour there, as it were. But I do want this as even as I can get it as well. That might have contributed as well if it were not particularly even. Alright, so let's give this a go. I am attaching based on the back first, so I'm going to get that lined up, and then I'm going to roll it forward and get that front point right on the line as well. We'll hold this for about 30 seconds and we'll see what we end up with. Here's hoping that this sets and anchors better than the last one. So give this, I don't know, 30 seconds or so, and then I'll start checking my alignment, and then if necessary bumping things around a little bit, and then cleaning up the glue that's squeezed out if necessary. That part I'm not really changing very much. Alright, let's see how we did. Alright, it looks pretty well centered in the back. It looks pretty well centered in the front. Checking for alignment. It's off a little bit relative to my fin in the back, and it is a little bit bowed in the middle. So I'll try to adjust that. And I still don't have it lined up particularly well. Let's try adjusting the back just a little bit here. And it's still pretty far off. So I'm just going to keep tapping it until it is basically in alignment with that back fin. Smooth out the glue. And check again. Yeah, it doesn't really want to be aligned back there. Alright, that looks passable, just for now. And like I said, it does look a little bit bowed, and that's, the fact that this fin is so long, that is a distinct possibility, as I'm sure I've said multiple times at this point. That is actually a fairly major problem, so you do want to make sure that it is as straight as possible. You could break out the straight edge there to help, but you have the fin, so if you can just look down like this and make sure that everything is basically in line with that back fin, you should be in pretty good shape. Alright, tempting fate here a little bit. I'm going to let that go and then try to attach this last one here. So this seems to have attached better. I say inviting disaster by saying it. So we'll go on to the next one, and then we'll check, once this one's on, how the first one's doing. Ultimately, those first two were such a problem because the front end and the back end, and I couldn't get them both flush. So I would get one attached and the other would pop up, which is, obviously a problem. Hopefully that will not come to pass again. If they aren't both perfectly flush, that's something that we can kind of pave over, I guess you could consider it, with putting on fillets, which I did, by the way. I did put on fairly thick fillets on the two fins that I already attached prior to this. That makes up, for a little bit of it, but if one is really far pulled off, the fillet, you just don't want to have to rely on a fillet to hold it in place. You really do want the glue to be bonded properly. So here's hoping I don't have a repeat of that. I'm feeling pretty good about this. I probably should have checked the fins a little bit more carefully before I started attaching them to make sure that they were nice and level the whole way across the length of the fin. I suspect that they were not. And that could happen for a variety of reasons. I could have done a bad job sanding it. They might not have been machined quite right. I doubt that's the case, honestly. I would expect that it was me doing an inadequate job of sanding. Alright. Let's give this a go. Okay. Checking my anchor point back there, and then rolling this forward, and that's better. Alright, so again, we'll give this about 30 seconds to set, and then we will make adjustments as necessary. Actually, I'm going to start right now because that front is not on the line at all. I can see, so we'll adjust that a little bit. The back is, the back isn't really either. So let's try to fix that before I have to do anything more dramatic. Alright, feeling better about where that's located. So hopefully this will be done and dusted and all that sooner rather than later, so I can finish the construction of this. The next bit, I do have a bit more body tube that needs to get attached, and usually, while I usually hold off to put the recovery system, at least the shock cord, in until after I paint the rocket, that I'm actually going to do prior to painting it, finishing and all that stuff, for reasons that I've partially discussed anyway. I think I'm going to end up putting in a little bit of Kevlar. instead of just an elastic shock cord on this. Alright, let's take a peek. It's not bad. It's a little askew, and it is a little bit bowed. Yeah, let me make sure I know which way. Kind of near the end, like the back third of it or so. Okay. Alright, feeling pretty good about that. Let's smooth out the glue. And there's basically none on this side. Okay. Double checking. Alright. Now, just going back to the first fin I attached, it's still, you know, it's in line. That's good. It has popped up a little bit here at the front. It's not much. So it's lovely. That's great. And that's what you get when you fool around with something that probably didn't need to be fooled around with. Fortunately, the one side of it is still pretty well anchored in place. So I just need to realign. Alright. Okay. The other fin looks pretty good for the time being. So I'm just going to let these dry. If they end up peeling off a little bit, I suspect that will probably happen on the third one that I did, so the first one I did today. And I suspect that's probably going to come apart a little bit. You can see it's pulled up a little bit right now. It's not much. That I'm pretty sure I can cover up with a fillet without any real structural problems to this. So I think this is just gonna, I'm gonna hold this down for about 30 seconds, I think, and then I'm just gonna set it up on its tail end, and I'm gonna let it dry just in the air. And then these should be ready for some fillets. And one last check for alignment before I let them set. Alright, that should be good. Have a look, see if it's off or not. I mean, it's not, it's not bad. I can live with that. Anyway, so thanks for watching. Next video we'll do the last bits of construction, and then it will be ready for the finishing process to start. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.